Hello, welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Iain McNay, and today I have a guest, Heath Thompson. Hi. Heath. And what we're doing this morning is that we have three people, Heath and Deborah and Rory, who they've had their own awakenings in their own way, but they're not teachers as such. They haven't written books, they don't do seminars, but they've something to share which is important, and they're very much on the human journey. So I'm having a chat with Heath first, and then we'll be joined by Deborah and Rory, and we'll have a discussion and Renata will join us as well, amongst the five of us, about awakening and a little bit more detail of the important things in their lives. So with you, Heath, you sent me some notes, and you started by saying you joined a Buddhist practice on the teachings of a Vietnamese monk.
That's right.
In 2007. So what drew you to Buddhism in the first place?
Zen, actually. I'd been interested in a practice for quite some time. Probably 15 years or so I was looking and searching for something, but actually couldn't really find something that spoke to me. And I practiced Aikido for quite some time, and was interested in Zen through samurai and so on, and I got interested in the poetry that came along with that. And I'd already been interested for some years, early 90s, in Tai Chi and Chinese poetry, and I heard about the Tao, and Zen was very similar. And I just came across on the internet, I hadn't thought of looking on the internet for some reason, that there was a Zen group in Leamington Spa under the teachings of Thich Nhat Hahn, who is the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist that I mentioned. And I went there twice and really liked it, but the group closed pretty much after the second time I went there. So it just happened that the man who was the kind of head of the Midlands area said, why don't I start something up in the Redditch area, which is where I was living near at the time, because there are a few people that are also interested. But I didn't really have the confidence to do that because I didn't know anything of Buddhism apart from those two times that I'd gone there. So it wasn't until another 8 months had gone by when Thich Nhat Hahn was coming from France to England for a week that I thought, well, I'll do something that coincides with his visit. And I started a group, and that was in 2008. Yeah.
So what drew you in the first place to Tai Chi and the practices you were doing, the Zen? What was in your life that was significant, that was pulling you in that direction?
It's a good question. I think as a child I'd just been interested in some of the programs and films that were on television with the martial arts particularly. There was a program in the 70s that I used to watch called Monkey, which was about Chinese monkey god and a lot of martial arts, and there's a lot of quotes from Buddha in that, so maybe that was somehow internalized, I don't know. But and when I was having my haircut at the time, when I used to have hair, and the lady then said, I think you might like Tai Chi, and there's a local group setting up, why don't you give it a go? And that was in '92, and I'm still practicing it now. So yeah, I loved it. It just felt right, and I've liked poetry for a long time, and my first book that I've still got today of what I call a value is a book by Tu Fu, who was a Chinese wanderer of around the 8th century. And his poems are about nature and companionship, I suppose, on his travels. And I just fell in love with those. And it stemmed from there, Iain, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about, in the notes you sent me beforehand, you talked about 2 or 3 significant realizations. Let's just look at those. What was the first one you felt was something significant happened, and how did you recognize it?
I would say for what we're here today for, really in 2009, I had 2 within a month of each other. That really made the difference. And the first one, well, what happened, I need to rewind a little bit, but it's only short.
Yeah.
And that, because it seemed to me that when people were coming to the Buddhist group in 2008, they kind of expected that I should know something about Buddhism. So I joined a distance learning course with a Tibetan school based in London, which was very detailed. So that the second book that I learned was The Two Truths, the absolute truth and the relative truth. And it was about the 8 different schools of Tibetan Buddhism and what they thought of pretty much, it seemed the relative truth. And at the end of the book, I felt a little bit angry, I suppose, that I didn't know anything about this other truth, this absolute truth. And yet I felt compelled in some way that I really wanted to know what this truth was, but I didn't know it was something different than what I was already living. And I had a few conversations with the other students, and it just seems too complicated. I thought if the truth is the truth, then it has to be simple. And so I quit the course, and I just remember sitting in my garden on a step watching bees and insects fly from flower to flower. And I had this sudden change within me, a sudden feeling right here. And the moment that I felt it, my thoughts said, "You will never feel this thought again." And that happened once before in Tai Chi. A lot of people have been talking about chi energy, life energy going through different parts of your body, and I felt it once, and the same words said, "You won't ever feel it again." And I didn't feel it for 10 years. And I sat there on a step saying, I'm not going through 10 years of not knowing what that was, what I just felt. So I decided that I would just have a sitting practice without any reason to sit, because I wasn't meditating at the time. And I wanted to see if this feeling would come back. And thankfully it did keep coming back, and it stayed long enough for me to realize what was being expressed. And it felt like within me, although to say within it wasn't really the right thing because it wasn't contained, but it just felt like there was this endless pool of stillness, that there was something there that was just totally untroubled, and that what it was all that there is. But I still didn't know what it was, and I still wasn't really any more further forward, if you like, in a spiritual sense.
Well, that's quite a deep thing to say.
Yeah.
All that it is what you said, all that it, what you were feeling was all that it is, I think you said,
yeah,
something like that. It has a great depth, that description.
Yeah. But I think I must be quite thick, because I hadn't really comprehended what I was looking at. And at the time, I was trying to get back into a yoga practice, and I Googled the top 10 yoga books, and the second one was one called, by Eric Schiffman, I think, Moving into Stillness, the Practice of Yoga. So I looked in the first couple of pages, and he was talking about how stillness is the presence of God, and how you can get the different wisdom from that. So I bought the book and started looking at different religions as to what they said about being still. And of course it's in the Bible, in the Psalms, "Be still and know that I am God." And I don't know to this day, but I had this compulsion to go upstairs to a drawer that hardly has anything in it. But inside was an old Tai Chi notebook. And the front page of that was a verse from the Tao Te Ching, which is one of the classical books of Taoism. And verse 16, part of it says, "Returning to the source is known as stillness, and this is the way of nature. And the way of nature is unchanging, and to know that is to know the constant and to be awake." But I still wasn't awake. And I kept thinking about it.
But how did you know you weren't awake?
Yes, well, in a sense there is no awake, but I just wasn't any different. And
so you still had the same thoughts, you were approaching life in the same way, that you felt nothing had fundamentally changed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you'd had a taste, or you'd had a...
Yeah.
You had a reference point of some kind that was different.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it was until the second event, if you like, which I just happened to be getting out of bed in the morning, and I looked up at the sky out of the window, and I saw the same presence in the sky. And that presence was then everywhere and all things at once. And I remember laughing at myself at how simple it is, and it just was that all Buddha's teaching suddenly made sense. And that, I don't know, I could just see what he was trying to convey all those years ago, and that it's a simple teaching said in different ways, but it's the same teaching. And we are that, whatever that is. I don't know what that is, but I know how it is. And yeah, since that moment, it's just everything has that beauty. And for me, it brings a softness and a gentleness and a lightness. But it takes time to mature, and it still is maturing. But also in that simplicity, we discover that, in a sense, we are already that. So we don't really need to go hunting for enlightenment or awakening, because when it matures and we get to know it more and more, we're in a sense returning to the nature and the wildness of what we were, how we were born to be. So I see, to use words, the most pure expression of that I can be is to be a man, to be a person, as I was born to be, without all the worries and the thoughts that get in the way. And I don't understand this, Iain, but there's a love that comes out of it. I don't really see the thing itself as love. But when I feel through it, it's that beauty there, yeah. It's in those flowers right now, and it's in the table. That's what they are. It's not in them, they are it. They're all expressions of a single thing that just happens to appear as it does. But when we go through life, we tend to like some of its expressions and not others, not realizing that we're looking at the same thing. But when we realize we are looking at the same thing, then of course those likes and dislikes tend to flatten out. And I think this is the equanimity that is spoken of quite a lot in Buddhism.
But how did it practically change your life, insofar as, did you feel your personality changed? Were you different with people, with situations? On the human level, how did this maturity happen?
On a human level, it had a lot of ups and downs, actually, because I lost interest in pretty much everything. And I lost a lot of friends through it, and I think it made things difficult for my wife as well at the time. Because we'd be looking forward to a holiday, but I didn't care whether I went or not. And we used to ski, and I didn't care if I skied or not. So what I've found that I'd have to try and make myself be interested in those things, and it seemed a little bit hollow. But I was making a mistake, actually, which I didn't realise until last year. I felt for some years that I was walking around like as a dead man, really, in this way that nothing actually mattered. And but it came to me that that's not how it is either. How it is vibrant whilst being still. It might be empty, but it's also full. It's something that is without any description, because.
But
yeah,
I just want to get
on a human level.
Yeah, I kind of. So when I'm interested when you said you walked around like a dead man.
Yeah.
So this realization had happened, the inclusiveness. I'm not sure if you used the word oneness or not, but you are everything. So how could you feel like a dead man? It's like I want to challenge you on that, really.
Because every result has no result. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't change anything. So I had no goals or objective any longer.
So from the way you saw human life, every avenue was kind of a dead end, was pointless. Am I expressing that right, or?
Yes, to a degree. Actually, the two things that to look at people living normal human lives felt like there was a sickness that I was seeing that people weren't aware of. And I found that difficult to begin with. And yeah, when you know you can't change anything, when you know there's not really a you, which has become a cliche really, but when you know that you're looking at everything that you're looking at is yourself, and that it just plays itself out, that you don't have a hand in that to a degree, then what is there to do?
So could you call it a kind of pointlessness?
Yeah. I think they call it aimlessness in Buddhism, and I can't think in Taoism because my mind's gone blank. But yeah, a pointlessness is a good word.
And so what changed it from the pointlessness to the vibrancy and the liveliness that you talked about? What were the factors that helped open that up?
I left the Buddhist group in 2011 because I realised I couldn't communicate what I knew to people very well, and I decided that what I'd learned had come from nature and what I experienced had come from nature, and I think that's where it's come for Buddha and Lao Tzu of Taoism and nameless other people, Jesus and so on. So I spent time just watching nature and seeing how nature is, because that was, if you like, it's pure expression. And I'm sorry, what was the question again, Iain?
No, it's okay. But what was the catalyst for the change from what we define as the pointlessness to the vibrancy?
Yeah. What I realised is that, in a way, that I was stuck in a spiritual sense and not a life sense. But actually, what we call God, or the Absolute, or the Tao, is life with a capital L, if you like, and everything is its expression, as Rory was alluding to earlier. It is, in a way, you could be the dead man walking, or you could be the vibrancy of it, and still there'd be no point, but still be alive. And I looked at sort of wild animals, and you'd see an animal would, in a way, just be spontaneous to some degree, and it would do things, and there doesn't need to be a point to it, but it lives and it's alive, and we won't know whether it's actually thinking in terms of what it's doing, or in a spiritual sense. I think some animals do have that. But yeah, I just suddenly wanted the life of it, and not to feel that death any longer. It's like a death.
And so when you felt you wanted the life of it, how did that manifest? Did you then see more of a point without an aim, or how did that happen?
Well, it caused a lot of trouble, actually, because I realised that a lot of my life was dead. The job that I was doing didn't make any sense to me, and I hadn't done for a while. Where I was living didn't, and my relationship with my wife didn't, and we'd been together for 24 years or so. So there's lots of big changes. And I felt that actually I'd been holding on to things, and in some way that, if you want to call it the unfolding, when we're trying to hold on to something and the change can't happen in the way it wants to change. Not that it wants to change, but it naturally unfolds. Some ways you have to let go. And then when I let go, someone else came into my life suddenly, bringing this life and family and children and change very suddenly. And yeah, no reason why, but it just has.
Yeah, so it's interesting because we're going to be joined by Rory and Deborah. You mentioned Rory, and Deborah had a whole process of very intense, you didn't see her part, but very intense letting go, which she did in a very conscious way. So was your letting go, did it just happen on its own, or were you putting in extra meditation or observation? What form did your letting go take?
think over the years since 2009, I've not really been listening to my thoughts very much. And so when I felt unhappy thinking-wise, I just ignored it really. And but there just came a point somewhere inside, if you want to say the heart, when I'd looked more at these areas of my life, and part of that was due also to looking at my spiritual practices. I didn't really feel that any of them fully felt right, I suppose. Then you start looking at other elements, and it just came to the point where I couldn't ignore it any longer. It wanted out, in a way. I don't know what the it was and where it thought it was going, but it just needed to be out, and it did. And
so it was quite a spontaneous thing in one way, was it? Or?
Yeah, one day, really. It happened in one day.
So talk about that day. I'm interested in that day.
Well, I've been looking at my life for probably a couple of years, but not really looking at it at the same time. So I sensed that there was an unease, but I also knew that there was this kind of malaise, if you like, this pointlessness to it. So I was just running along on empty and running along not really thinking, and that's where I felt quite hollow. And the more I looked at these different elements and areas of my life, the more I began to question it, and the more I was looking at nature at the same time and seeing that it wasn't that way itself. The more it became clear to me that there's something that, yes, whilst this stillness and peace is there, it also has an energy to it. The two can be as one together. You can live a life and be vibrant, but also at peace. And you can go skiing if you want to go skiing and still be at peace. And the two, although they seem opposed, actually fit together. That's how nature is. I'm meant to be a man. I'm meant to have the urges of a man, and I'm meant to live like a man. Not meant to, but that's my expression. Like these flowers are flowering pink and purple. To be something that they're not would be a wish for them to be yellow or something. It's just natural. It's just that. So in a way, to be thinking, should I be doing this, or should I be doing that, or should I be staying where I am? Should I be this peaceful person? Is of this ego, in a way, that doesn't exist. It's all a joke, because there can't be a me that understands and someone else that doesn't, or vice versa, because we're one. We're one. And I think it doesn't know itself. And that's why I think humanity is the way it is. It's not at peace because it just doesn't know itself.
That's very true. So we've got about 30 seconds left. And you were mentioning earlier that about poetry. So can you finish with a poem? Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, it'll be very short. One of my Taoist poetry ones. I'm a simple man. What I say is not complicated. Sit here with me a while in my tiny garden, and I will show you how to read the scripture of grass and flowers.
That's lovely, thank you.
Thanks.
So thank you, Heath, coming on to Conscious
You're welcome.
TV, and we'll be joined by Deborah and Rory shortly. So do feel tuned. Do stay tuned for part 2 of the programme with Heath, and we'll see you there. So welcome back to Conscious TV. I'm Iain McNay, this is Renata McNay, and we're now having the discussion. You would have watched the first part of the programme with you either seen Heath or Deborah or Rory's story, and we're now going to have the three of them together just talking about the important things that were fundamental in their opening up to who they really are. So, Renata.
Yes, so it's my turn. I would be interested in knowing what the most valuable thing was in your transformation. You know, was it meditation, was it inquiry, or anything else? So maybe we start with Heath.
For me, it was just the experience of stillness, really. I see it all around me, even in things that are moving. That it's probably more accurate to say settled rather than still, I suppose. So that when, I don't know, when there's chaos around, for example, you can still be calm. And somehow the chaos is happening, or the world's unfolding around you, but you still have this calmness. And for me, it feels like it's here. And it kind of means an end to meditation, because you're living through it in a sense.
And was that a practice? Did it take you some time to actually be able to see the stillness in the world once you saw it in yourself? Or was that immediate? Can you still get pulled out of it?
Yeah, there was a month probably between the moment where I felt that presence, which I realised was a stillness, and then I saw it in the world around me. And then after that, it's just there. Can you be pulled out of it? Yeah. If there's a strong enough fear, for example, then you can be pulled out of it, you can worry, but you see it differently. And I know lots of people have said the same, but you're not touched in the same way by the same fears. But you can let it be so if that's what you want. So it's just brought more calmness, even though I was pretty calm anyway. But it's just less trouble. I feel more untroubled. And how does that help people who are watching? You know, that they just need to stop in a way, just to be still now and then, and you find yourself being more silent and more tranquil. And I don't know, you might be a single mother with children tugging at your shirt sleeves every moment of the day, and finding that silence is difficult, but it is there. And if we just do little bits here and there, there's a settling. It's like our energy calms down as well. And I suppose we just begin to notice it around us more, and it fills us a bit more.
So in a way, we could help. Help us by just making little notes everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I know. I was just in Vienna visiting my grandchildren, and my daughter-in-law on the fridge, and everywhere she has these little stickers, trying to remind herself.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
To always come back to this place which is always there.
Yeah, and one other thing that I find helpful, 'cause in my previous job I did a lot of travelling, and you can be stuck in traffic jams and getting stressed, like I was this morning, that's stuck in traffic jams, but it's an opportunity to see the clouds, and it's an opportunity to see the wildlife, the plants and so on, and that calmness is there. It is there.
So would you say your inquiry is always coming back to this place of stillness?
Well, in a way, it just is there rather than coming back to it, I suppose. I don't know. It's like saying I'm coming back to being a man in a way. I can't not be, but in the way I can be. But if you want to get to that, then it does help to have get these little moments, reminders, just to stop. Have a cup of tea. You don't have to meditate. Sit looking out the window for 5 minutes with a cup of tea in your hands, and just forget.
And you, Deborah?
Can you ask me the question again?
What was the very thing which was the most important thing in your transformation?
I think meditation, or I call it pondering actually, a lot of the time, because it's not, I don't sit like this for 7 hours. It's just a deep self-inquiry which also spreads to the outside. So I would say that the meditation pondering led to the the self-inquiry. So I can't really separate it into one tiny thing, because the whole thing was what led me to the end result. But I think just in each moment through life now, I notice everything that if I pick up a cup of tea, for example, it will go through my mind, who made this tea, who picked it, who shipped it, and it feels like a gift, a real gift. It's not just a cup of tea anymore, it's all these people. And you realise that the world is involved in everything that you do. And that's important, because you don't get caught up in your mind anymore. My mind just doesn't catch me now, where before it was constantly contemplating everything that might be going wrong, or what going on around me. So I think the self-inquiry for me was the big key, because just going out of myself, I realised that from that place of being out, I was just trying to outrun me. And even though it was beautiful, and I've had meditations that have been so amazingly powerful, it feels like every cell in my body is at the height of orgasm, and it can last for an hour. So those things are quite useful and enjoyable. But yeah, it's a combination for me of the going right inside and then looking right outside, in and out and in and out, the big, the small, the big, the small, and then it all just makes sense. It all just starts to fit into place.
So, would you say you live a lot of your time beyond your mind?
Yes, I think so now, yeah. Yeah. I see everything I see it all as just creation, and everything, like even going in the supermarket, you just look around and think, wow, look at all this that everybody has done, and that just connection, it feels like I am just a tiny weeny part of something enormous, and I feel just such joy in that. And everybody that I see, I think, look at me when I'm doing that, look at me when I'm doing that, look at how I behave when I think that.
Yesterday you mentioned something which I felt very touched with when we had dinner last night, that you spoke to your son, and your son is going through some grief.
Yeah.
And you said to him, how wonderful, what a great experience.
Yeah, well he's a musician, and he's just spent 6 months in Germany with his girlfriend, who he met in Spain, and she's German, and he's been there with her, and now he's gone back to England to try and break his way into the music scene. And he was just so sad. He was saying to me, I miss her so much. And I was saying to him, what a joy. I feel that all of the emotions that we have throughout our life, they're all our learning. They're all, to know what it's like to really miss someone, that's God knowing that. And that is what, he wasn't quite getting it, but I miss her. But saying, but think of the longing, how wonderful it is to long for her, to want to kiss her, to want to be with her, and just like when you're first going to see her again, there's the joy. Try and see the joy, not the negative. And
so your way is turning suffering into delight.
Yes, because it is all a delight. In the end, it's always a delight. Yeah. I think even the deepest suffering, when you look at it as it is, you see how much you learnt from that. Yeah. And we're here to learn everything, every emotion.
We keep running away. We don't really
because we don't want to face it. It's frightening. Yeah. But then when you look at it, you realise it's not frightening at all. It's just love, all of it. Even the most negative things are love.
Yeah.
It's just our interpretation of them. That's the problem.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rory.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of it's very hard to put down to one thing. Certainly self-inquiry was the process, if there was a process. Trying to understand, it's the thing, know thyself, know thyself. If you understand yourself, you'll understand everybody and everything, because it's all you in the end of the day. But if I had to put one particular thing that was a catalyst, it was the suffering that came from trying to fix the world, trying to fix things, ambition, just trying to bend the universe to my will, you know what I mean? That just broke me. and it happened in stages. I burnt out several times, and I would say my journey was like, initially, God or creation or whatever you want to call it whispers what you need to know, and you ignore it. Then it says it a little bit louder, and you ignore it. Eventually, it'll kick you in the face, and then you'll be sitting in a pile of rubble. And that's what happened to me. Eventually, you'll just get an awful smack because you've ignored the same thing over. It gets louder and more, in my experience. So it was my arrogance, if you like. I'm going to make this work. I had no other choice either, though. All you can do is go, this is the best thing I can think of to do, which was to try and fix it all. And it was trying to fix it all to the point where I had to admit there was no fixing anything. So it was suffering, really, to put a word on it. Suffering. That's what broke me. I don't think I would ever willfully have given up or surrendered. I haven't given up, but let go enough to see that I didn't know anything.
Just what you're just saying reminded me of something which happened to me 2 weeks ago. Where life made through me a full prostration and banked me on the floor, on concrete, with my face. I mean, the way I looked, it healed nicely. But I thought, gosh, that was a push life gave me. I'm still thinking about what it all meant. But it's true.
It literally brought me to my knees. I don't know I can make a connection. I don't know how useful it is to say that caused that.
Yeah.
But within months of the sort of psychological or emotional awakening, my back went and my legs went, and I was on crutches for about a year. And it felt very like I was physically having to let go of all that tension as well. I can't say that's what happened, but it happened. I just can't say there was a connection, but it seemed, within that, like what you were saying, there was this sense though that I still felt as bad as I was, that, and I even considered, I didn't know what was happening. I thought I had to be okay with whatever happened, and I was. I just went, well, if I have this, if I'm never recover from this, it'll just be that. And it just sort of felt okay, as intense and as sort of crippling as it was at the time. It was about a year before I was right. But it did seem like a physical manifestation of this psychological letting go, but I don't know, but it happened.
Yeah. You have a question?
Is the process ongoing with the three of you? You've all said in your own way that you're free in terms of that, a human life, you feel free to a large degree. But do you feel that freedom deepens? Do you feel your process gets wider? Let's start again with you, Rory.
Absolutely. There's just with every passing day a letting go of any concept about anything, any idea that you know anything. I mean, really, just any notions of how anything should be, and the questions just stop coming. The question, what's this about? Nothing's about anything. You will reach that point where it's just what it is. It's just what it is. So there's nothing left to ask at that point. And most of what people are doing is asking themselves, what's this, what's that, why does this happen, why does that happen? That gradually just is met with, it just is. And that took time in me, certainly. And I can't imagine that process, even though the questioning has stopped, the peacefulness seems to just become bigger, or whatever the word is, but there's more of it, I hate using words like profound and that, because it adds a quantity that really doesn't exist, but it's just...
It deepens somehow.
Yeah, it just does. It does, and words like beautiful, it just becomes, it just does. It does. It sounds, and that makes it sound like a thing, which it isn't. But there is certainly an expansion of it, whatever that means.
Okay, Deborah.
I think as long as you still have a mind, which we have because we need one to to survive, inquiry can never really end. But I realise from where I am now, everything that I experience, it's as if it's happening for the first time. So, yeah, I think it is never ending. It just, as you change, your perspective changes, and I don't think that's ever gonna end. I think it's just, it's like a show that you are just moving through, and your perspective may change, but I don't think it will ever end. I don't think, as long as we're here in our lives, because experiences are always coming, aren't they? They never stop coming.
But do you discover more subtle programs, more subtle historical, which you become aware of, and then you, when we did the interview with you, you talked about healing them. Is that still goes on?
It's not kind of, the healing part of it doesn't really, that feels like that's healed, but now it's just a kind of realising that I don't actually believe anything that I believed. And I hear myself think something or say something, and I think, I don't even believe that, I don't even know why I said it. So it's a deepening of understanding constantly. Something I even thought about a week ago, I can think about again and realise I don't think that at all anymore. So yeah, it's just a constant, like the questioning has, I don't think my questioning will ever stop. I'm just a question asker. But yeah, I think it just moves to level to level to level.
Is it a kind of a deepening into the present moment where everything else starts to collapse? Like the time, the future, the past, the construct.
Yes, I don't, in my daily life now, I don't think about the past at all. Well, I've been going through a period of looking at it from the perspective of now, which in some ways was harder than the clearing of the past, because I can see now where I was actually the problem. And that was quite an interesting process, but that seems to be slowing down now, and it just seems to be more of a accepting of all. And
well, when you say I was the problem, can you say more about that? In which sense were you the problem?
I was the problem because my mind was the problem.
Which you projected outside.
Yes. I project, for example, a few weeks ago I went to pick a flower, and I was meditating, and I had some lovely nasturtiums growing, and I noticed that there was a weed, a big weed, and my mind said, that's a weed, and my hand went to pick it out, and I thought, but look at it, it's absolutely beautiful, but I've been told that's a weed, and I've believed it's a weed, so I've just let it grow. It's enormous now. My garden's gone wild. Yeah, I can't pull out a dandelion. I think, well, that dandelion has its own right to be there. So yeah, it's just more of a deep accepting of all. And I find that people's behaviours and things, where before they could niggle me, I just see their pain or where they're stuck, and it's perfectly fine. There's no need to interrupt anything or anyone. So yeah, it feels very deep.
Can you be still pulled out of these depths?
Well, recently I haven't been, so I don't know if I can be, because it hasn't happened. But for the last, once I dealt with shame, that was the end point for me as far as my anxiety and suffering. Well, the suffering had gone, but I still was having anxiety. But once I spent an evening completely immersed in my shame of my life, all the things I felt ashamed about, by the end of that, I have not had a single moment of anxiety. So whether or not it can come, I mean, what I'm doing today would have been absolutely out of the question for me to do. I wouldn't even have my photograph taken. And so the fact that I'm doing this, part of me can't quite believe it. No one I know can believe it. It's saying, what? You're doing what? So I've forgotten what I was going to say.
So when you say you spend a whole day immersed in shame, how do you do that? What can you tell somebody?
Right, okay, well, shame came, what happens with me is it comes through me as an emotion. and I don't know what it is.
On its own, and then you sit down,
I feel
or you
the-
call it up?
No, I never call anything. I
Okay.
sit and I allow. There's never any interruption from me.
Yeah.
Whatever comes, comes. I can sometimes think, I think this might be about that, and then it's not. So I don't get involved. I just allow whatever comes, comes. And this feeling came, and then the picture started to come of the things I'd done in my life that I was ashamed of. And then it lasted about 3 hours. I had to see everything, every single thing I'd ever done that I held shame for came to me, and I was curled up in a ball. I felt awful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm watching it. So I'm completely immersed in it to the point of shaking, but at the same time, I'm love. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, wow, that's amazing that this is all, all coming. So it's kind of like I'm 99.9% immersed, but this one point is on the outside.
I mean, that's so beautiful. I mean, it shows how, when you allow it, nature heals itself through this body-mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you give it the space and the attention and love.
That's all it wanted.
Yeah.
Let's give Heath his turn now. Do you remember the question?
Yeah. Similar in that I think maybe just living it teaches you more about the understanding that you had when you first had that moment. Because it doesn't feel to me like there's something new that I'm learning. In a way, it feels, yes, it's I can't think of the word, but it's reflecting what I knew then, if you like, at that moment. It's like a lot of understanding comes in one moment, and then you're living the life, and it does feel like a door that keeps on being pushed open, and it does feel beautiful, as Rory said.
Yeah.
And but actually, I don't really think about it during my day in a sense of. Someone once said to me, years ago, I've gone from thinking of the little self to the big self all the time, and so there's still something there. And there's something nice about actually not thinking. In just, you can actually, if you start to try and do it, it's like, I don't know what's going on in the brain, but it does seem to, those gaps seem to get bigger. But you lose a lot of concentration as well. You forget what someone said or asked you, and they think you're probably losing it. But I don't know. I don't expect there to be ever a point where I feel like I've got to the end of it at all. I hope there isn't, really. 'Cause it's, I think that what I'm particularly interested in is how this feeling and why we're here, how it interacts with life, how it interacts with people fighting one another, and people being obsessed by one another and possessive of one another and stressed at work and so on. What's the point in what we're talking about unless it helps in that way? And if we're to each believe our experiences and what other people on this program have said, then we're all that anyway. We're all at peace anyway. So what's stopping us from seeing it? And that's what it's about. It's about stopping and letting go of the thoughts and just letting them go, not letting go of them, but letting them happen and whoosh, don't grab at them. It's not going to happen all the time. It still happens to me. If there's a strong enough thought there, I still get it, and I find myself minutes later thinking, I grabbed hold of that, and I feel stress or something. But there would have been a time where I wouldn't have had that stopping, and I'd have just carried on and got more and more angry until you become angry and you don't know what you're angry at. And I think if we forget about awakening and so on, if we just relax a bit more and be a bit more gentle on ourselves and not ask too much of ourselves, then it becomes a letting go and a forgiving. And I think that's happened to me as well over the years.
It's exactly what a very high Lama said once to a friend of mine who, after years and years of studying Mahamudra and all the sutras and what have you, he said, forget it all. The only thing you need to do is just relax.
Mm.
And then the nervous system lets go,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
All the trouble.
Yeah, it feels a bit like it's more of an unlearning than a learning. It's unlearning all the stuff you've learnt, and then what's left at the end is reality.
Yeah, it's. I will have later on today an interview with somebody who is coming from Australia, and she is enlightened. She says, "I am enlightened," which is quite intriguing. She doesn't say, "I'm awake." She says, "I am enlightened," and. But she says, you know, her mind doesn't work properly anymore. She needs to write everything down because, like you said, she forgets.
Yeah.
It's not
Don't think I said
important
that.
anymore. You don't focus on all that stuff we try to remember.
Yeah.
And
I don't think it goes in, really. It's sort of...
what you need to remember, you
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
anyway. And if not, okay, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
I was just going to read the last paragraph of what you all sent me. I thought was quite interesting. Deborah
Yeah.
said, "You don't have to be special. You just have to want to be free." With Rory, he said, "When you know that you know nothing, then you are free to consider anything and believe nothing. It doesn't matter how you describe it or label it. Life simply is what it is, and the description label is meaningless." Then Heath said, "Well, actually, it's a little bit different. Current expression is through poetry. It comes to me from nowhere, and I scribble it down before I forget. I call it Taoist poetry, a little bit of a different feel, but I think you've all kind of, in your way, you're all saying the same thing. You all summed it up in your own unique way, and I think that's wonderful, actually. So you didn't actually really meet until two of you met last night, and Heath, you came today, and they all wrote into Conscious TV saying they were ordinary people with awakening. So maybe you want to do the same if you're out there and looking. As I think we've had very valuable programs today. And just to explain again, you're watching this at the end of one of the three interviews with Heath and Rory and Deborah. So if you haven't seen the other two, you can find those on Conscious TV, and you can first watch the first part, which you won't have seen. So thank you very much, guys, for
Thank
coming,
you.
because you've
Thank you.
flown in from Dublin, you've flown in from Spain, and you've flown in from Leamington Spa. So you all made an effort to get here.
And he's moving this afternoon to Austria.
So there's a lot of kind of movement going on here with you guys. Thank you again for watching TV, and I really hope we see you again soon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.